Hey guys, Hammer for Arrow, Season 5, Episode 3, A Matter of Trust, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I know I wasn't the biggest fan of last week's, but like I said, I was worried that we were going in a direction where the team was going to be the main focus, and that was the case for this episode, but I think unlike last week's episode, this episode just executed better. I mean, yes, there was a lot of the same stuff as the last episode, but I just feel like this episode gave us a more hopeful tone of where we're going. I really enjoyed this episode overall. I thought we had some really interesting stuff going on in this one, but let's just get into this episode because I definitely feel like this season is on the right track. But we start off, we see the Green Arrow chases after a thug with a gun while his new team watches on Felicity's monitors. Felicity and the recruits comment on the fight. The thug is a drug sealer who seals a new and dangerous drug called Stardust, and after being threatened by Green Arrow, the thug drops the name Derek Sampson, and Green Arrow drops him off a roof, which he's actually played by, Cody Rhodes, I think his name is. Yeah, Cody Rhodes, who, if I'm not mistaken, was the person that Stephen Amell fought in the ring in WWE. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, but I heard that they were going to do something like that, so I thought it was kind of cool the way they did that here, and overall, I thought he actually was a pretty strong villain. I like what we got from Samson overall, but Renee wants to hit the streets. He knows how to find Samson, Renee or Wild Dog, whatever you want to call him. He knows how to find Samson, but Oliver joins everyone, refuses to let any of them onto the streets until they impress him in training, which I totally understand. This is more of what I want to see. He's not just going to let them go on the streets because he doesn't really trust them right now, and I like that this episode is basically about him gaining their trust and them gaining his. You know, there's none of them turning against him, and I like seeing that. I thought that we were going to see a lot of the season, but I like that this season really did focus on that. It's how they don't really trust him and he doesn't trust them, and they need to get on each other's good side. And Felicity receives an alert and Oliver leaves. So then we see Detective Malone, who is Felicity's boyfriend. Finally, we got a name for him. He's used to alert to summon the Green Arrow because he wanted to share some information about the recent cop murder from 2 episodes ago. There's some evidence that ties back to Church. Now, we don't see Church in this episode. Church is still out there. I don't think Church is dead. We don't see anything of the Black Arrow either, but he's definitely out there. But I like that we're starting to see something happen with here. I like Detective Malone's story overall. So Lyla visits Diggle in military prison. He fills her in on how he was framed for trying to steal one of Damien Dark's nukes. He's brought back to the cell and begs the guards not to let him leave him with the other man in the cell. The man is actually Floyd Lawton, who of course we know Floyd Lawton to be none other than Deadshot, and I thought it was kind of cool the way they did that. I know for a while they couldn't have, multiple Suicide Squads, but I guess because Suicide Squad didn't do very well as a movie, I guess they're going to bring Suicide Squad back on the series, which I actually am fine with, because Suicide Squad was one of my high points of some of the, Season 3. I think, Suicide Squad episode in Seasons 2 and 3 were both really great, and if they're really going to bring back Suicide Squad, I'm all for it. So at his office, Oliver's security guard is upset about losing track of Oliver the night before, and I really do like seeing Oliver as the mayor. I think that's something this season's doing pretty well, is we're seeing Oliver have control, as the mayor, but also as the Green Arrow. I like seeing that. Oliver deflects and reminds that he never wanted a security detail. He goes to meet with Thea, who shows him the news. An anchor named Susan Williams is actually ripping into Oliver for appointing known alcohol, Lance as deputy mayor, and obviously she's very upset about that. Now, this is something that surprised Oliver, since he told Thea specifically not to offer Lance the job, but she did anyway, and he's obviously quite pissed at her for that. So Thea agrees to handle the situation, and for once, I like that Oliver, was mad at Thea, because I understand why he's mad at Thea. I mean, in past seasons, I feel like they've just added drama between these two, but this makes sense. He's told, Thea specifically, I don't want Lance to be appointed, for this, but I like that, Thea's going to handle the situation. I like seeing that she has as much power as him. I like the way that's going. So in Russia, Anatoly goes to see Oliver. Oliver's angry about the men who were killed during the bell-ringing exercise. He's ready to walk away from Bratva. Anatoly agrees not to stop him, but wants to show Oliver something first. Again, I like the way these flashbacks are going. Not as interesting flashbacks, I will say. The flashbacks in the first two episodes were more interesting, but the flashbacks here were still good. It's just there wasn't a ton going on in them. But Renee and Evelyn then sneak out to find Samson. She's not exactly thrilled about breaking the rules, and I like that Evelyn isn't as pro to do that. Like, Renee obviously is okay with breaking the rules, but Evelyn's not. But she continues to accompany Renee. They find Samson and several other making Stardust, and Renee pulls off his hockey mask and jumps into the fights. And Evelyn defends herself as Wild Dog and Samson fight. a pipe burst, spilling liquid into a huge vat of stardust. Eventually, Samson also falls into the vat, and that was a pretty intense scene, the way that was done. And I will say, really good action in this episode. But in his office, Oliver then meets the new DA, Adrian Chase, who I knew we were going to meet him at some point. He is, in fact, a main character this season. I liked this character so far that Josh Segarra plays. Chase is furious about Stardust, which is worse than even Vertigo. He was going to have Samson arrested and flip him on his suppliers, but he can't because Samson is dead, killed by a vigilante in a hockey mask. He knew it wasn't the Green Arrow. He knew it's someone in a hockey mask. So Oliver obviously knows that this is Renee. And I get why Oliver's really pissed. Oliver rages at Renee, while Renee and the others need to trust Oliver. Oliver also needs to trust them. If he can't, then why bother? And I like that Oliver is realizing that maybe he can't really trust his team. In fact, I thought this episode was going to end with him abandoning the team entirely. But Felicity's also not thrilled with Renee, calls him even more stubborn than Oliver, because he really is. I mean, he goes completely against what Oliver wants him to do. And Oliver obviously is very pissed at him for this. You know, he told him specifically to follow the rules, and he's not following the rules. And I like that Oliver remains the one in control here. I think it's just a much more interesting thing. You can tell that obviously Wild Dog wants to do his own thing, but I like that in the end, you know, we see that Oliver is the one in control, and you know, Wild Dog is still afraid of him, realizing that he can't, you know, trust Oliver in the way he wants him to. So Thea then meets with Susan Williams, and Williams is actually really kind. She agrees to walk back the story when Thea admits that she appointed Lance without even asking Oliver. So I like seeing that. I like seeing that Susan Williams isn't just some bitchy, overly, you know, someone who's going to expose Oliver. I like that overall she was, you know, willing to listen to Thea and give her the benefit of the doubt. But Diggle then asks Lawton how he is alive, and Floyd then tells him a story of surviving and getting arrested again, and he asks for Diggle's story. So I like seeing that. And as the medic, because obviously he thought that Deadshot died. You know, we saw in that episode Deadshot seemed pretty dead, but apparently he's not. So as the medical examiner starts to autopsy Samson, the drug dealer awakens, wondering why he can't feel pain. Samson then kills the medical examiner. Really interesting stuff, really graphic stuff there, but Curtis then offers Rory a ride, how simultaneously flirting a little and mentioning his husband. And when Rory mentions that being from Haven Rock, Curtis makes an excuse and goes to Felicity after Rory leaves. Felicity does not want to tell Rory about the role she played in his home being nuked. She still blames herself. They're interrupted by an alert from the hospital. And I thought this was an interesting twist. We find out that Felicity was actually behind his home being nuked. Even though Dark played the role, she did in fact bomb his home. So this is something that she really doesn't want to tell Oliver. And it makes sense why she's being so secretive. So I like seeing this overall. I like that there's something that she's keeping from him. Samson is then causing chaos at the hospital. He's shot in the back a few times, barely reacts, and nor does he seem to feel the arrow that the Green Arrow shoots into his shoulder and everything. So they fight. Samson is clearly very strong. Green Arrow managed to escape, and really, I mean, Samson seems pretty, you know, like nothing can really hurt him. He seems pretty immune to arrows here, and the team returns, but Oliver does not want their help, obviously because they, you know, betrayed his trust, and even when Renee admits his mistake, the others all try to offer assistance. Oliver turns them down. You know, he never wanted this team to begin with, so it makes sense why he's so against them, because if they're not going to trust him, I mean, he's not really going to put his faith in them. So Anatoly then takes Oliver to see a woman who asks about her son. Anatoly shows her a picture of one of the men who brought killed, and assures her that her son's killers are dead. She calls Anatoly an angel, and Anatoly explains to Oliver that the men trying to ring the bell with him were assassins. Not everything is what it seems. So I don't really know where this is going. Like I said, flashbacks didn't do a ton for me in this episode, but I do like where we're headed with them overall. Lawton then amused himself by playing solitaire and getting under Diggle's skin. He mentions Andy, and Diggle finds himself explaining that Lawton didn't kill Andy, he did. And that's true. You know, he's the one that killed him. It wasn't Lawton, and you can tell that Diggle still feels a bit regretful about that, but there's not much he could do. I mean, Andy was on Dark's side. If he didn't kill Andy, Andy would have probably bombed anyway, so really they had no choice. So Chase and Oliver then have a meeting. Chase is calmer than before. He wants Oliver to ask the judge to sign a search warrant to help them find Samson. Oliver's willing, and Chase good naturally tells a story about how they met 12 years earlier, with Oliver stealing Chase's girlfriend. And I don't think we knew this before. I think this was interesting information that we found out. Like I said, I don't think we knew any of this before, but overall, I think it really does give us this interesting dynamic to Oliver and Chase that we didn't know before. So Thea then arrives and shows Oliver the newest story from Williams. Williams insults Oliver for not even knowing who is being hired fired and leaving his job to his team. So Thea blames herself and plans to resign. So I don't know if Williams was messing with Thea or if she actually was upset, but I'm really kind of worried about where they're going to go, Williams, because I don't want her to be one of those characters that just like bashes him, but we'll have to see where that's going to go. That's going to be interesting. Curtis and Felicity talk about Rory. Curtis reminds her how secrets never stay secret and how she has been hurt by them in the past, so she should trust Rory. She just needs to come clean to him and tell him what happened, because there's only so long she can keep this from him. And I really do agree with Curtis. I mean, even though she wants to keep this hidden, she needs to just tell him what happened, because it's just going to make things more awkward, and if she doesn't tell him now, it's better that she tells him and not that he finds it out from another source, because there are other sources out there, such as Lawton and people like that, who know what Rory's been through, and it could end up really bad if she does not tell him. So Samson gathers with his old crew. He plans on giving all his men the same treatment so they can also be stronger and feel no pain. Then they won't have to fear anyone, even church. So he burns himself to demonstrate, and that overall I thought was pretty interesting, the way he's trying to make this cure. But Felicity talks with Oliver about how being a leader means being responsible for everything his team does, even when they disobey. He has to trust. They are alerted to a break-in. Oliver goes to get the team, and even though Oliver doesn't know what Felicity's talking about, I thought overall that was really good. And I like that Felicity this season seems to be there for pep talks and not just confrontations. Like, it's a lot more caring and a lot less demanding. Like last season, I can understand why people got upset with her, getting upset Oliver every 3 seconds, but I like that she's giving him this nice pep talk here. Oliver goes to get the team. Lyla then visits Diggle at his cell. She tries to investigate to prove he's innocent, but Diggle wants her to stop. He believes that he should remain in prison to pay for killing Andy, and I totally understand. I mean, you can tell the guilt has really weighed down on Diggle. I've said it before, we have a much darker Diggle this season, and it's understandable. I mean, after something like that, it's kind of hard to come back from, just go back to your old self, and I think he really doesn't just have PTSD from being in the, soldier and everything. His PTSD is more from killing Andy, and Lyla tries to comfort him. He realizes that he's been alone in the cell the whole time, and Lawton was actually a figment of his imagination. So I like seeing that. It didn't really make sense why Deadshot was alive, but this is, again, someone that Diggle feels guilty for. And I thought that was a really well-done twist, the way they did that, because I thought they were going to bring back Lawton, but no, he's actually a figment of Diggle's imagination, and I really liked it overall, the way that we're realizing that pretty much everyone that Diggle's imagining is someone that he feels guilty for, Deadshot being one of them. Deadshot took a bullet for Diggle, and he feels very guilty for that, so I like seeing that. The team then trains. Curtis reveals himself a wrestling fan, especially a wrestler called Mr. Terrific, and we know that's who Curtis is going to become. Oliver shows and apologizes to Renee. Felicity tells him that a chemical replicator was stolen. They realize that Samson wants to replicate the drug which changed him, which Renee reveals is stardust mixed with the liquid which dripped from the pipe. He's going back to the scene of his death. So we get this pretty awesome scene where the Green Arrow cuts Samson's tendons, rendering him immobile. Not feeling pain does not mean his body is not being damaged, and I thought that was a really great line. Green Arrow and his team then leave as the stardust is destroyed, and I like that they actually were able to work at this as a team. It gives us this really hopeful direction, and it's a way for us to root for the team. I want to root for this team, and they did a good job for me to root for the team. So Anatoly then explains that Brodva means brother. Oh wait, okay. So Oliver then takes the team to the Arrow Cave for the first time. They're all very impressed. He also bonds a little with Renee over liking his hockey mask. So it seems that this is going to be a little more hopeful, that this team could actually function well, and I like seeing that. I was a bit surprised because I didn't think the team was going to work at all, but it seems like they actually could function well. Who knew? So Anatoly then explains that Brodva means brotherhood. Even though the men of Brodva have all tried to kill Oliver, they are his brothers, and he must trust them. Again, a really good way to coincide with the main narrative. The fact that the main narrative focuses on trust, and this did as well, that's something they're doing really well. It doesn't just feel irrelevant, it feels like it actually matters. And Oliver obediently turns his back on the men. He allows them all to cut his back with knives, trusting that they won't kill him. So just like he's trusting that the team could go rogue and that they'll have his back, he's trusting the Brodva as well, which I like seeing. So Thea then finds Chase, telling Oliver about Samson's capture, but what looks like the Green Arrow's new team, Thea tries to resign, but Oliver insists that he needs people he can trust. He walks Thea out to a press conference where he repeats Felicity's earlier words. He trusts his team, and he's responsible for every decision they make, including his new deputy mayor, Lance, and he is in fact appointing Lance as mayor, and I like seeing that. I like that in the end, he is trusting Thea. I mean, I'm hoping that Thea doesn't betray his trust, but I'm hoping that things go well here. So Thea confronts Williams before she can leave. Williams still plays at being Thea's friend, but Thea does not fall for it this time. She knows that Williams is really just trying to take everything she says and turn it against them, and she threatens Williams' job if the reporter ever tries to play her again. And I like this. I like that Thea isn't just going to fall for her tricks that easily. So after the team gets comfortable in the Arrow Cave, Felicity approaches Rory. She tells him everything about her part in the nuke failing on Haven Rock. He cheerfully walks away, and I like that she came clean to him. I like that she didn't hide this from him. I like that in the end she did tell him, look, I was the one responsible for this. You have to understand why I did it. Overall, really good. Lyla then comes to the cave to make a request. She wants Oliver to break Diggle out of prison, we find out, and that is the way the episode ends. Really good stuff overall, but let's just get in this episode and my, what I thought of it overall and where I think it's going to go. So overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought there was some really interesting stuff going on. Like I said, I like that Oliver is now trusting his team. It seems that even though Wild Dog and some of them might go off on their own, he feels that in the end they will have his back, and I like seeing that. I like that we now have a team that we can trust, and I also like that Felicity did come clean to Rory, because I didn't want any animosity between those two. I think it would have been dumb to have a whole story all season where she's not telling the truth, and I liked in the end she did tell him what's going on, so I like where that's going. Diggle is going in a very interesting direction. The fact that he's now picturing all these people in the prison, that he feels that he's guilty for, but they're not actually there. Overall, I found it to be a really interesting thing, and the fact that Lyla is now coming, the question is, does Diggle really want to be broken out? I mean, we've seen that Diggle, I think, feels like he belongs in there, and I don't know if he's really going to want Lyla and Oliver to break him out of prison, but we'll have to see where that's going to go. That's going to be very interesting. I like seeing, obviously I want Diggle to get out, but I don't know if he really wants to be freed. We'll have to see really where that's going to go, because I don't know if Diggle really wants to get out of there, but we'll have to see. As far as Chase, I like Chase and Oliver's dynamic. I like that Chase, right now, seems like a fair guy. I like him overall, and I like where that Oliver did in fact let Lance be part of his team. I like the way that that's going. We'll have to see really what's going to happen with that, because that's going to be very interesting. And I like that in the end Thea did have control. Williams is someone that I'm a little bit worried about just because of her opinion and things like that, but I don't know. We'll have to see really where she's going to go. And I guess the only other thing is I do like where the Brodva is headed. I like that, like I said, the way that's coinciding with the main narrative I think is overall really interesting. The fact that Oliver is a team in the narrative, but now he is the leader of the team, I think just really shows how far that character has come. I also want to know more about Chase and Oliver's history, because clearly they do have some sort of backstory, and it's not good. Like, there's some beef between those two, and it's definitely over this girl, and we're going to find out more, I'm sure, definitely. I feel like there's going to be one of those episodes where they show flashbacks to that, but I don't know when. Chase is a main character, so I'm sure we're going to get more into that. Not much going on with Church in this episode. We didn't even see Church here. I know he's still out there, but we'll have to see where that's going to go. Overall, guys, not a ton to say about this episode. I overall really did enjoy it. Overall, I think it was a lot better than the last one. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. What do you think of this season so far? I really like where the season's headed. I think we're going in a very promising direction, and I'm definitely happy about it. I like that there's really no foreshadowing of Oliver and Felicity getting back together. I don't want them to get back together. I think that they're better off just friends. I'd like to see them stay this way, and hopefully the show does that. I don't know if they're going to. I doubt they will, but we'll have to see. So if I did have one complaint with this episode, it would be with Felicity's boyfriend, Detective Malone. I'm just not really into his character right now. I find him to be very generic and like, oh, he's just there because Felicity can't be with Oliver. Hopefully they give him some more interesting to do. This whole thing going on with the cop I think is interesting, but we just don't really know much about his character, and I feel like they should be focusing a little bit more on him. But it's a very minute complaint. I feel like overall this season is turning out pretty well, but other than that, I really don't have any other complaints this season. Overall, I think so far I'm really enjoying the season. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next, which will be for Big Brother Over the Top, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.